What's happening, YouTube? It's Simon 466 Cards. It's Super Bowl Sunday. Do you know where your ultra modern QBs are? We're doing our monthly look into ultra modern Prizm commodity card pricing. We've done this every month since the beginning of the season when I said, of these 16 ultra modern QBs, the list is right here, of these 16 guys, when you look at their Prizm commodity cards in general silvers, except for one or two cases here, at least 14 of these people, of these cards, you will not make your money back on. And the caveat I said was you have to account for eBay fees, because that's what you'll be able to get if you sell them. And so just barely that prediction has come true, because of these 16 cards, 13 of them did go down, some of them by a lot. Poor Desmond Ridder, poor Mac Jones. Of the three that did go up, Lamar Jackson, presumably your MVP, only went up by 10%. Not enough to make up for your eBay fees, which I caveated 6 months ago. So very barely this prediction came through. So now let's just jump into the numbers. The only three quarterbacks from the ultra modern era that went up: Brock Purdy. I don't think I need to explain that very much. Lamar Jackson by 10%, so not enough to cover your eBay fees. And strangely, Jordan Love up 73%. Those are the only three from the ultra modern QB era. The Jordan Love one is interesting, and I just want to dig into it a little bit here before we do some big picture stuff. If you go take a look here, his cards bottomed out January 21st. Again, they played against the 49ers on January the 20th and lost and were eliminated from the playoffs. So eliminated on January 20th. So the 19th, the card was at 741. On the 21st, after they lost, the card was at 684. So down about 10%-ish. So it's fine. But then, since then, it's gone back up from 684 and now closer to 800, 780, 785. So that is weird, considering that Jordan Love, again, lost on January 20th. I mean, had an okay game, 194 yards passing, not great. 2 picks, not great. So it does strike me as a little bit odd. And I'm not sure what to make of that. Whether or not the card was at 650 or 730, it doesn't matter. He would have been up significantly over the beginning of the season when he was at 425. But I thought that was an interesting thing to note. Having said that, let's jump back into the main crux of this. What this data tells me, the fact that so many players are down from the ultra modern era and down significantly, it tells me a lot of the force, a lot of the people driving up the price of these cards don't buy these cards because they like the player. They don't buy the card because they like the card. They're using sports cards as a proxy for gambling on these players and teams. Because, again, the only three players that are up are the QB that's likely to be the MVP, and he's only up 10%, Jordan Love and Brock Purdy. Everybody else is down, and down significantly. More interestingly, if you look at the other three QBs from the non-ultra-modern era, Ryan Tannehill is up 43%, but it doesn't really count because it went up from $14 to $20. So I'm going to ignore that, right? 14 here, 20 here. The one person that stayed flat is someone who played about 4 minutes of football. It's Aaron Rodgers. He's up 1%, so essentially flat. And then the last one is Matthew Stafford. Isn't that weird and interesting? Like, why is it that the only player with a big investor base or collector base, whatever you want to call it, that went up is the guy who basically didn't play this entire season? That tells you a lot about this football quarterback market. And so I think the main takeaway here that I have, looking back on 6 months of data here we have, is that people are using these commodity cards, and especially for ultra modern QBs, they're just using them as a way to gamble on the player and gamble on the team. They're not actually interested in owning the card or collecting the card. And to that I ask, why don't you just gamble online? Wouldn't that be an easier way to do this? You can just gamble online, bet on the over-under win totals for whatever football team, gamble on who's going to win the Super Bowl, gamble on, over-under a number of touchdowns for a quarterback or passing yards for each quarterback. You can just gamble on this stuff online without having to go through the whole thing of buying and selling sports cards. Wouldn't that just be easier? It strikes me as a little bit odd, right? And the other follow-up question to that is, are people using sports cards to replace gambling because there's less of a stigma to sports cards than there is to gambling, which obviously has a very strong stigma attached to it? Or does this allow for people in non-gambling states where gambling is not allowed? Is this what's driving it there? Or people that are not allowed, like kids? Is this kind of a way for them to gamble on it? I'm not sure what the answers are to any of these things, but I feel like it's pretty clear that, again, based off of these numbers, people are not buying these cards to collect them. People are buying these cards to, quote unquote, invest in them, but it's more of a speculation, right? And I'm pretty sure if I redo this exercise 8 months from now or 7 months from now, and we do this thing all over again in 2024, something like this will happen again. So let me know in the comments below. Do you think a year from now, in 2024, the exact same thing will happen again? The vast majority of new QBs will have the pricing go down and go down significantly, have less than a handful of people where you can actually make money. I mean, in this case, it was literally 2. And this is just a thing that'll keep on happening in the hobby over and over again. Because that's actually what I believe. I believe, barring the 1 or 2 instances of the pandemic bubble, this is just a repeating pattern in the hobby because everybody, similar to my last video, everybody believes that they're smarter than everybody else. And as a result, they're going to make money on this ultra modern QB because they got the inside knowledge, they got the inside stuff, they know more than you. They've watched all the scouting reports, they've watched him in training camp, they know that this guy is going to be the next big thing. He's going to be the next Patrick Mahomes, who by the way is down 15% on his Prizm Silver PSA 10 from the beginning of the season, even though he is again in the Super Bowl. That tells you all you need to know about this. Would love to hear your comments below on this data. It more or less matched what I predicted. Again, barely though. If this had gone up by a few more percentage points, I would have not been correct. But I think the overall gist of it is that do not buy these commodity cards because people just use it as an investment tool. Would love to hear your comments on this video and on this premise. I might do one more update after the Super Bowl to see where pricing is at. Maybe late February, early March. We'll see. But I think this shouldn't change, or that shouldn't change the context of what we're seeing here very much. Thank you as always for listening and watching, and I will talk to you all soon. Cheers.